This video is 201. We're looking at the sine rule. If you want to look at the cosine rule, that's video 202. Now the sine rule, there are two different sine rules actually. I suppose this video is the sine rule for sides and angles, which is not this one. So the rule that we're looking at today is this: A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Notice the capital letters and the lowercase letters, that's important. And just so you're all aware, the reciprocal of all of these is also true, meaning sine A over A is equal to sine B over B is equal to sine C over C. So there's two versions of the rule. Right now, if you're looking at this certainly as a first time, it may not make a huge amount of sense at the moment, but when you see it with a question attached, it should hopefully begin to make some more sense to you. I've just written a few other things on here because it gets mixed with a few other bits. Basic trig, you should all know. SOHCAHTOA, sine, cos and tan using a calculator. Advanced trigonometry, sine rule and cosine rule. I'll just sort of put this in a bubble. We're not looking at this today. We're looking at this on another video. But sine rule, I'm looking at these two today. Okay? So let's get into it. Alright, question 1. It says, work out the value of x and give your answer to one decimal place. Okay? Now, you will need to memorize the rule that I've written on the front. I'm going to write that rule again now. So the rule that we're memorizing is A over sine A equals B over sine B equals C over sine C. Now, what this really means is there is a relationship between the side and the opposite angle. And that relationship is consistent. So the relationship between A and sine A is the same as the relationship between B and sine B and C and sine C. So as you should remember, hopefully, capital letters go on the corners, on the vertices, and lowercase letters go on the opposite side. So if this is capital A, then this is lowercase a. If this is capital B, then this is lowercase b. And if this is capital C, this is lowercase c. So labeling a triangle really is the first thing. And I would probably write that. If I were the kind of person writing steps down as I'm taking notes, watching a video like this, I would write label the triangle is probably your first step. It's also, by the way, the first step when you're doing basic trig as well. So please remember to label the triangle. Even if it's already labeled, guys, you can just scribble them out and label them what you want. If they call them x, y, and z, but you don't like sine x over x and sine z over z, if that's confusing for you, just scribble out the x, y, and z and replace it with a, b, and c. You're totally allowed to do that. It's your exam paper. Once you write your name on it, it's yours, so you're allowed to do that. Anyway, in this question, I'm working out this, which is a side. So what I want to use is this version of the rule, not the version with the angles on the top. Okay? So depending on what you're finding, that tells you which version of the rule you want. So if I was finding an angle, then I would use the reciprocal version. So the reciprocal version is sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. If I was finding an angle, I'd use that. In this question though, I'm finding a side, so I'll just put a bubble around it. I'm using this. Okay? So here we go. Let's substitute some stuff in and see what it looks like. So A in my question is x. So I'm going to write x over opposite A, capital A here, sine 38, and I'll put a bracket around that because your calculator will when you write it, equals, now in this case you're going to use the one that you know. Obviously there's no point me using C because I don't know anything about C. I don't know what angle C is and I don't know what side C is. So I'm just going to ignore that. See you later, I don't care about you. I do, however, know about B. So I'm going to write equals 13 over sine 100. Now, let's just go back to very basic algebra for a moment. If I had an equation and it looked like this. It said x over 6 equals, I don't know, 12. how would you work out x? What would you need to do to both sides? I can just hear you shouting at your videos, at your phones or your iPads. Hopefully, I can hear you saying, "You times by 6, sir." Yes, exactly. You times by 6. Both sides, you multiply by 6. That would give you x equals 72 in this example, right? Nice and simple. Now look at what we have. We have something kind of similar. We've got x divided by something equals this. So I'm going to multiply by this denominator. So I'm going to times that by sine 38. And I'm going to times that side by sine 38. And that will give me x equals 13 over sine 100 times sine 38. So that is going to give me an answer. And I'm going to grab my calculator now and I'm going to put this in. I want you all to see exactly how I put this in. So I'm writing 13 divided by sine 100. Don't forget to close that bracket. And then I'm going to times it by sine 38. And again, don't forget to close that bracket. One other thing I should mention, if you are using a scientific calculator, just double check it says D at the top, D for degrees, okay? And mine does, okay? So I'm going to press equals, and it says 8.12706, etc. So I'm going to write that, all those numbers down. Gives me 8.127067597, which I'll round to 1 decimal place as instructed, which is 8.1 centimeters. And that is your answer in this case, 8.1 centimeters. Nice and straightforward. So it's a really, what I would refer to as a point and shoot kind of formula. You know, you just put in the things you need to put in and then get x on its own. In this case, I had to times by this denominator. Alright? I'll give you a chance now to try question 2 yourself. So please do pause the video and have a go yourself. Done. Work out the value of x, giving your answer to 3 significant figures. So for question 3, I'm going to have to label it myself. So that's the first thing I'll do. I'll call this capital A. Excuse me. I'll call this one capital B, and I'll call this one capital C. Remember, capital letters on the vertices and lowercase letters on the opposite side. And because the question is asking me to work out x, which in this case is an angle, I am going to write my formula, the sine rule, but I'm going to put the angles at the top. So I'm going to write sine A over A equals sine B over B equals sine C over C. And as usual, I'm going to cross one of those out because I don't need all 3. I only need to use 2 of them, and the one that I don't know about is C. So see you later, C. I'm looking at A's and B's here. So let's write down, let's put in the bits that we know. Sine A, capital A, over A. So I'm writing this down then. Sine 95 divided by 6.7 is equal to sine B, which I don't know, so I'm going to call that x, sine x, over lowercase b, which is 5.4. Now, as I've explained before, when I'm trying to get sine x on its own, I have to multiply by this denominator. So I'm going to multiply by 5.4. Multiply by 5.4. That will give me, well, it'll give me whatever it gives me, but the point is, I will end up with the following. Sine 95 over 6.7 times 5.4. Okay? So, put that in your calculator. Sine, I'll just show you how I'm doing it. So, fraction button, sine 95 divided by 6.7, and then times it by 5.4. So that gives me 0.802, etc. 0.802 9031895. And that's sine x. Now remember, that isn't the answer to the question. The question said work out the angle. I've worked out sine, the sine of the angle. Now what you've got to remember, just like with trigonometry, basic trig I'm talking about, when you're finding an angle, you have to undo that. The last step is to undo the sine function. So the undoing of the sine function, or the opposite of the sine function, is the reciprocal of it, the sine to the minus 1, which is basically when you press shift and the sine button. So if I press shift and sine, this comes up, sine to the minus 1. So I'm going to do sine to the minus 1, and because it's still in my calculator, I'm going to press answer. If I've accidentally cleared it, or I don't have a scientific calculator, you can just write it in. So, in fact, I'll show you. If I press sine to the minus 1 answer, I get 53.4 blah 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 blah. If for some reason I got rid of it from my calculator, I could just write down this number. So sine to the minus 1 of 0.802903189 should give me the same answer. Yes, it does. 53.408. So x equals 53.408237774 to 3 significant figures is 53.4 degrees. And that is the answer to this question. Okay? See how you get on with the rest of the questions on your own, and good luck.